So I want to welcome all of you here this morning on this great Washington day. Hopefully it'll stay nice and dreary for me because I like the fog and I like the rain, and I'm excited for fall. I'm sure you all are too, right? But today I'm going to ask you guys one question that I want you to think about. Well, two, but the last one will come at the end. For right now, I want to ask you all, what's truly important? Now, we're asked this a lot in our lives. Growing up, even people who aren't Christians are asked this. For some, that answer is power. For some, the answer is money. For some, the answer is their intellect. But I want to know what's truly important. Now, a basic answer is clothing, food, and water. We all need that, so that's obviously important. It's as important now as it was for the people of the past. So today we're going to look at a passage where food was something especially important to life. So if you'd all open your Bibles or fire up your apps to Genesis 43 and read along with me. Now the famine was severe in the land. So it came about that when they had finished eating the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, "Go back and buy us a little food." Judah spoke to him, however, saying, "The man solemnly warned us, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.'" Now, famine. We don't exactly go through those anymore, so it's hard for us to even imagine what a famine's like. So I want you all to take a moment, and let's pretend that all the Starbucks closed forever. And that's your famine. Though seriously, a famine is where there's a shortage of food. And in this case, it was for 7 years. So 7 years without a whole lot of food in your house. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine having to divvy out a certain amount of food to however many people in your family there are? There's 6 members in my family, so that wouldn't be a whole lot of food for everybody. Continuing in verse 4, it says, "If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you do not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, 'You will not see my face unless your brother is with you.'" So really, Joseph's brothers had one choice. They needed to go get food. Problem was, they would need to bring Benjamin along. Just to go get and see Joseph, let alone try and get the food, which last week we saw how well that worked for them. So Israel said, "Why did you treat me so badly by telling the man whether you had another brother?" But they said, "The man questioned us particularly about us and our relatives, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Do you have another brother?' So we answered his questions. Could we possibly know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Israel was scared. He was scared because he didn't want to lose another child. He had already lost Joseph. Joseph, his prized son, his son from Rachel. And Simeon, well, Simeon was as good as gone too, because Joseph had taken and imprisoned him. There's no guarantee that Benjamin would return, or any of his sons for that matter. But he was backed into a corner. See, without food, his beloved family would die. But if he went, it's possible that his beloved family would die. So we're at this conflict. And even worse, Israel's blaming his sons for telling the truth, which, if you know anything about Israel in his past life, is one of the biggest liars of the Old Testament. In verse 11 it says, "Then their father Israel said to them, 'If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best products of the land in your bags and carry down to the man as a present. A little balm, a little honey, aromatic gum and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the money in your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouths of your sacks, that you might, perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also and arise, return to the man.'" So it comes down to Israel has to send them. He made that decision. Without food, we'll die. So they have to go. And his fear is understandable. I mean, Simeon, for all he knows, could be dead, and he noticed nothing of what happened to Joseph. He was told Joseph was killed. So maybe if he sends a present, Joseph might like them more. So then maybe they can get his sons back. Maybe. And lastly, he tells him to take his brother because he doesn't want him to take Benjamin. But again, it's I have to. So in verse 14 continues that Israel says, "And may God Almighty grant you compassion in the sight of the man, so that he will release you and your brother and Benjamin. Release to you your other brother and Benjamin. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved." So the men took the present and took double the money in their hand and took Benjamin, and they arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. Now you see, last week when we talked about Joseph's brothers going to Egypt, Israel didn't mention God. He didn't call upon God for favor. This time, the stakes are much higher. It's not about food. This time it's about his sons, about his one prized son that he has left. And even in the end, when he's asking for God's favor, the food isn't mentioned. It's all about his kids. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with him, he said to his house steward, "Bring the men into the house, and slay an animal, and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." So the men did as Joseph said, and brought the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid, because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, "It is because of the money that was returned in our sacks the first time that we are being brought in, that he may seek occasion against us and fall upon us and take us as slaves and our donkeys." Now they're scared. Oh, those poor boys. Who has ever, gone to see the mayor, and the mayor's like, "Hey, come to my house, we're gonna eat dinner." That doesn't happen usually. So boys are like, "Why are we going into his house?" "Oh, it's the money. He's gonna take us as slaves." I don't think that would have been common. I would think if you had taken money, he would have just killed them. I think it's a little ironic that their fear of what will happen to them is exactly what they did to Joseph. Perhaps maybe they're still remembering and still guilty because of it. Later in verse 26 it says, "When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present which was in their hand, and bowed to the ground before him. Then he asked them about their welfare and said, 'Is your old father well? Is he still alive?' They said, 'Your servant our father is well. He is still alive.' And they bowed down in homage." See, this gift, this grand present, it was filled with these expensive things in a time of famine. It's not mentioned again in the passage. It's as if Joseph was like, "Oh, that's nice. It's nice. That's not what you're here for. That's not what I'm here for." And then he proceeds to ask how Israel, his father, is doing. Because in a time of famine, the first ones to die were the children and the elderly. Because, like I said, stretching out the food, those are usually the two who need the most. And even then, Joseph's brothers answer that his servant, our father, is well. Because, again, they just want to get the heck out of Dodge and have their food and have their brothers and go. So they think if they put him in a submissive role, that'll help. So then later, I'm going to paraphrase for the sake of time. We have Joseph sees Benjamin. He gets all emotional. And so he needs to leave and go cry somewhere and then come back. And he tells them to serve the meal. He puts the boys in order from oldest to youngest. And then he gives Benjamin 5 times as much food as the rest of them. Because you see, Joseph is upset. He's still upset. He's been upset this whole time. And on top of it now, he sees his brother. And then he gives his brother the most food, because even to Joseph, Benjamin is the most important. Because Benjamin is the most important. We all have a Benjamin. To some people, it might be a person. To some people, it might be a house. To some people, it might be a car. I want to show you my Benjamin. This is my Benjamin. This is my 8-year-old brother, James. He was born when I was 13 years old, and sometimes he calls me Mom, and then he corrects himself, but that is part of the role that I've had in his life. I, like Israel, would do anything for him. I would give up my food, give up my home, give up my money, and if it came down to it, I would die for this kid. There's been so many things that we've gone through together that has just gotten to the point of he's probably one of the most precious things to me on earth. So, I want you all to take a moment, because we all have a Benjamin. I want you to think about what it is. Be it a person, be it an object, but I want you to just picture it. Now I want to ask you about your Benjamin, about the place that it has in your life. More importantly, I want to ask why God isn't in that place. It's important that we have something that we're willing to die for, but it's more important that that something is God. If you would die for your kids, if you would spend, early morning time playing video games or cleaning your car, I want to ask why you won't sacrifice that time for the one who sacrificed his life for you. It's important that we look towards God, that we make him our Benjamin, because at times something earthly, or even something, I'm not saying my brother's not important, he's very important to me, but I'm saying where are my priorities, because if I'll give this importance to an 8-year-old, why won't I give that importance to the God who died for me? So I want you all to take time and think about that, and think about how you can take God and put him in that place in your life versus whatever object, whatever person